At one point, I called up home and I was like, I'm not doing this. Sometimes you want to be a rock star, sometimes you want to be a scientist. But the real world is very, very different. The world is not idealistic.
What surprised you the most when you entered the professional world?
We are wired very differently in architecture school. At 3 a.m. now, I have to fight my grogginess. The acceptability kind of makes the problem smaller.
Have you hit a plateau?
It happened to me. I started learning Spanish. Maybe I'm not going to work for a while. Don't take yourself so seriously. You are not the center of the world.
Joining me today is Ms. Priyanka Sood. She's a design lead at Kingspan India. She's an architect and a storyteller, and with a decade of experience in shaping and designing immersive experiences. She has been leading teams and creating projects of all sizes. Today, she's going to talk about her experiences of how she led the teams and what she learned along the way. Welcome, Priyanka, to the show.
Thank you, Sachin, and thank you for introducing me with such beauty. Thank you.
And I'm really happy to finally have you on board. It has been a long journey.
It has been, and thank you, Sachin, for having me. Really, really happy to
Lovely,
be here.
lovely. So, Priyanka, first, right from the beginning, my audience would like to know who Priyanka is, how she actually entered the domain of design, and what actually kind of empowered you to get into design.
Well, it's always very difficult, because the definition of who and why I became keeps changing. So basically, it was my dad who, introduced architecture to my life. He was like, you were a creative kind, you should probably pursue this. And at that time, there were too many things going through my head, as a teenager, you think of so many things. Sometimes you want to be a rock star, sometimes you want to be a scientist. So that's how I got introduced to architecture. But the moment I started reading about it, the fact that it so beautifully captures culture, buildings, people, how they've been, so that kind of stuck with me. And yeah, so that's where I began. I was like, let's do it. Then through architecture, you evolve. I realized that the more umbrella term, the design, that was more resonate with me. So I tried to push the envelope on every direction that I could on design. And yeah, that's what I am. And I try to continuously figure out what I want to be and where I find my purpose in this world. But doing something to do with design and being around people makes me really happy.
Lovely, lovely. That's a nice thought to begin with. So let me take you to that day when you just graduated from your architecture degree. How was that experience? One. And two, was it even clear that what are you going to do? Because currently what you do is very different from where you started from.
True.
So not to keep any surprises, just give me every information about the day you graduated from.
So yeah, the day I graduated, I was very, very relieved because I was living in a city outside of my home, and it was 5 years. 5 years is a long time, You have your honeymoon period of staying outside and friends and whatnot. But by 5 years, I was like, yes, finally I've done my architecture degree, and now I'm going out and going to see what the world is all about. That was it. And but the world outside was quite different from what we learned on our journey in architecture and what I was anticipating. So from there, I just kept on grabbing opportunities. What might sometimes feel like a challenge, I took it head on. All right, okay, this feels good. Let me do that. And then gradually, I kind of getting into micro niches. From architecture, I moved to interiors. From interiors, I moved to retail and experiential design. And then for a triest, I was with the project management. I was like, no, 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 I need to see what happens on the other side of things. Why are these people not able to execute what I'm telling them to do? Then that was a tough one when you actually get to the other side. But managing teams and solving not just one problem at one time, but solving every individual's problem to some extent to how I can help, of course. I mean, they are all very creative, very well set, very individualistic people. But where they get stuck with a lot of things and how I can help in that gives me a lot of validation, a lot of pleasure to be, to be able to be of use and to solve a larger problem as and when we go. So that's where I came into more on the management and the more on the guidance role in design itself.
Okay, so this brings me to another question, kind of related to your story, is what surprised you the most when you entered the professional world, and where did you find it very different? Like, give me that instance.
Okay. So very cliche. You learn the standards and the idealistic principles to follow when you're designing for humans, and how are you supposed to go about it. But the real world is very very different, and the value of money, the how money as a component impacts what you do was a big shocker for me. I mean, when you, because all the projects that you do are mostly hypothetical. Even when I was doing my internship, I was quite quite guarded and guided both. That I was not actually in the lines where I could see what money would actually do to your decisions. So that was a very big revelation to me when I actually came into the world, because into the working world, because I was opportune enough to work with the principal architect himself, and thankfully he's a very simple guy. He's like, okay, so this is what we do. This is the client, we meet and we talk, and that's how we begin. So the aspect of money and why it's so important, when we are growing up and when we are studying, especially in India, I know the story is changing, but still talking about money, asking about money is still not a very nice thing to do. But every decision we make, why a certain material goes on a certain surface, why you want to do a certain kind of fabrication of something, comes a lot from various aspects, but money also is a big part of it, because every time we're doing for someone else, and the world works like that, cost is involved. So that was a
True that.
big thing for me.
And I think most of the designers struggle with this money aspect. They struggle with quoting their own prices also.
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. And most of the designers include me. I have so earlier on, and even till today, I have a big problem asking for money. Though I constantly, try and validate it, understand it, that what you do is just a trade of time. And all the time that you spend in learning what needs to be done, the experience gathered, is what you will be asking money for. But it's
That's
still
so
it's still
true.
very difficult. But and when I interact with young individuals, and when I talk to students in colleges, and luckily my team is also quite young, so I realize that talking about money is still looked down upon. That how can I ask for money? But some of them, especially the Gen Z, they are okay. They're like, it's okay. I am bringing my value. I'm bringing my expertise. I want money. I feel the millennials are a little more. They have to catch up. It's okay to talk about money, and it's okay to ask for your value.
True that. So, at any point in time, did you feel that this design world, this design, especially the architecture world, because it requires a lot of physical movement also.
True.
So, did you ever feel at any point in time, oh, this is not what I signed up for?
Very interestingly, right at the beginning when I started studying in my very first year,
Mhm.
so at one point I was not liking how things were going.
Tell me more about that.
Okay.
Because a lot of designers, after getting into the corporate world, they're like, oh, I am not made for this.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a kind of a bias, there's a kind of fear, there's a kind of struggle that they go through. And I want to know about that.
Great. So I'll complete on what happened in college, and then I'll come to when I started working and why I reconsidered everything. So while I was in college, so after about, I don't know, towards the end of first semester or towards the end of first year, I can't really put my finger on it, but I called up home and I was like, I'm not doing this. And I was talking to my mom, and she's like, okay, why do you want to not do this, and what do you want to do? And I was like, I told you I want to get into journalism, and I'm going to go and get into journalism, and this is not for me. Then okay, she was like, okay, I'm on this with you. You want to come back, you want to do journalism, but what is the reason for you to not like this, because you did sign up for this. So the subject I did not really like was architecture drawing. It was I don't know, it was not just sitting right with me. So she just had that whole counseling session with me on call. Okay, fine, I understand. You come back, you give journalism entrance, and if you get in and you don't like a subject, what are you going to do? Like, okay. For a minute, I refuted. I was like, no, I'm going to like everything. This is something I like. But then, when I went back to sleep that night, it really sat with me. That is it a challenge that I'm kind of, backing from, or I truly do not like it. I realized it was the challenge that I was backing up from. But then the next 4 years were beautiful. I learned a lot about the subject. I learned a lot about me. Where am I? And then again, few years down the line, while working, I realized that the world is not idealistic. It's not happening the way it is supposed to happen. And what am I doing? Then, that's when I started valuing the aspect that whatever we do, someone's money is involved.
True.
Some sort of value has to come out of it, and what we think we are doing is not always the right thing. Being idealistic in a very from a tunnel vision point of view doesn't really help. So I then started to keep open about feedbacks, that okay, if this is something that I'm doing, when ego subsides and your whole narcissistic syndrome of being the designer subsides, you're like कि एक बार मैं सुन तो लेती हूँ what is this
True that.
person's viewpoint, and why am I not the right person for this, and why am I not doing this. So that really helped me. It humbled me down a little bit, and I realized that what we do is more of a collaborative work. We just are enablers of what the vision is going to be. The problem is the biggest driver, and for whom we do, the end user is the one who is to benefit the most from it. So we are just enablers. The moment I brought myself to that, then I never thought about कि क्या कर रही हूँ.
Lovely, lovely. Acha, I have a very important question about portfolios. Now, I have seen many people talking about if you have a killer portfolio, it's all done. Do you, one, agree with this? Two, if not, what is that extra that gets in? What is it that extra that you need to have apart from having a good portfolio? What are those skills that you should have apart from just the portfolio?
I think it's a very beautiful question, and this is something that's not very glamorous to talk about. One, of course, you need to have a killer portfolio, but that portfolio has to be wired with what you want to achieve. I cannot have like a very aesthetic portfolio, but I send it to, for example, I make a portfolio around automobiles and I send it to cosmetic brand. The kind of comparison I'm trying to make is that once we make a portfolio, a larger portfolio, of course, you make of what you want to say. It's a personality of your own kind, and who you are is, when you're not there, it speaks for you. But in the real world, people have very limited time, and they judge very quickly. So the fact that you orient what you're doing to what you're applying for is very, very important. And portfolio is just one part of it. Having soft skills is really, really important. This is something I realize on my way, that communication is the key to whatever we work with, because there are always multiple stakeholders in a design job. You're not the only one who's running the show. There are always multiple vendors, supply chain, client, stakeholders, even in the hierarchy you're working with. So a clear and an accurate communication really goes a long way, especially when you want to be a team player. And that's also a very big challenge for most designers. I understand it from experience that working in a team might on the surface seem easy, but when you are very distinctive, individualistic, opinionated individual, for couple of designers to work together, it's a tough job. So that is something one should hone on. A lot of humility helps in coming on board with other people's opinion, and working together. And then leadership and problem solving skills, I would say, is a very, very important thing, because solving a problem not just through what you do, but being realistic about your challenges. For example, if I'm working in a remote rural location in India, and I am, for example, making a sustainable school, I cannot be employing materials of, let's say, a Western world, or something that is highly, highly, refined in an industry that comes in. So for example, to be very mindful of those things, and to be ready to know what needs to be done and accept it. is very, very important in the work that we do, and for an individual to actually thrive and find their place in this world.
That's lovely. That's lovely. From that example of that rural project, I would like to top up with a few questions around vendor management and around that communication piece you would have specifically for people who are not very highly educated or, for that matter, can't even speak in English. So let's talk on this example of maybe a sustainable school in a rural part of the world. How do you kind of communicate with your vendors or any stakeholders that you come across?
Understood. So there is a big part of design that is contextualization. So where the problem is, the context lies there. We could be studying in the most fanciest, swankiest of schools, but from where we are solving a problem, we need to be very well versed and at least empathetic. So empathy is a very, very big part of what we do. You might not understand the walk of life of the person you're working with. You have to be though open to them being them and you being you, but yet coming on together and working together. Of course, English is not always going to be, and it's just a language. There are people who do not speak but get their work done, right? So you have to kind of leave that comfort zone that this is my go-to way of communication, and actually when you're thinking of putting your point across and making something work, you actually will cross all barriers and hurdles on the way, and you will make it work. And it works both ways. The vendors that we are working with, they might not know the best vocabulary and they are not Oxford Dictionary, but they know their work.
True
they,
that.
they know, and they are your backbone in getting things done. So sitting together, getting to a place where you are on same page, irrespective of what language you speak or where you come from, is very, very important.
It is true. It is true. So, coming on the team communication, I'm sure you would have initially struggled or not. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I would like to know that as a leader. So, once you are a designer, that's okay. You are opinionated within yourself. But when you encounter different opinions in your team, how do you tackle that?
Oh. So, first when I started handling a team was way back in 2014. And I was very young myself. And I was like, okay, we'll do that. Then it was very, very difficult because the thing was that you yourself are not that seasoned, or you've not had those many experience to kind of tackle a difference of opinion. You know your way, there's a person who has another way, and sometimes you are able to make sense of, okay, maybe they're right. Sometimes you are very differently opinionated, but that neither of it is correct. So you, being somebody who is in a privileged position to lead, you have to get over yourself. You have to come to a point, and what works for me is to always leave where I am, forget predicaments or the dilemma of what's going to work, and think of what in an ideal scenario will work for the project or for the client. And that's where I am able to let go of the burden of being right and finding a way to make it work. Then a lot of communication, talking why somebody is disagreeing, to get to the depth of it, what is the reason behind their idea, and to back it up with rational. If they have a good rational, I'm always in for it. I go 100%, I accept it, and I'll be like, let's do this way. But if I am able to talk and find the rationale in this not working, I have been lucky that the team members understand enough, and then we come on board. So this is like a journey that keeps happening, and the more you do, the more you know. I'll give you a very different example. While I started working in the industry, and when you go on sites and when you work with teams, most of the staff or the vendors, the labor is okay in looking at a sir. That sir, sir is here. We'll tell sir that this is done, this is not done, this is our query, this is not answered. And I'm talking somewhere about 10 years down the line, 12 years down the line. And they're not okay looking at 5 feet women coming and telling them this is not okay and I need answers for that. So I had to kind of get over that barrier, and I'm sure everybody in my position or coming from a gender which is female to come into a little male dominated industry, initial struggles are these. So it used to be like that I had to convince my labor that I know, then I had to convince my contractor that I know, then I had to convince my supervisor that I know, that you are my site supervisor, but I know. And the journey was upwards also. So my superior needed to be convinced that okay, it's manageable and we can trust her. So that used to be an initial process of coming on board of the team that you're going to work with from top to down, that okay, I am this socket that fits in middle, but I know my job and you can trust me with it irrespective of how I look. So that's, I think that was a bigger challenge than managing a team of designers. Designers, of course, come with their own sense of self, but thankfully, I've been there. I've had my own struggles, so it's easier to understand where they're coming from and rather just shunning them down. So that's helpful.
One last piece of handling communications. You just mentioned that there are certain rationales that you kind of agree with. What happens specifically with clients? Because they have a lot of completely unrealistic, completely different, no rationale connecting. How do you deal with that?
That is something Sachin we talk about every day, and I sometimes after some interesting meetings at the end of the day, I'm also thinking that how did we manage to get through that? Uh, with clients, there are different people. The world is full of people, and they're all different. And tomorrow you could be my client. Anybody could be a client, and they come from a understanding of what they want, irrespective of how it is to be done. So beautifully here, the thing is that you have to be patient. I try to understand that I am the service provider here. So my job is to educate them, but not make them feel stupid. So I try to be very patient, and I try to be extremely open minded on what they want to bring in. I listen to that. I agree with what works, but I very politely try to tell them that this is not going to happen. And sometimes I've had altercations about it, but at the end of the day, those were the most beautiful projects that turned out. Wherein we fought in the beginning, and they're like, maybe we're not want to work with you. But eventually, when they go around and they talk to other people or however, usually, luckily, it's the best way forward. So they've come back and we have delivered some good projects. But that's a very tricky path we all navigate in terms of how to deal with a client, because that's the ultimate goal. And until and unless we don't have a client, how would we ever realize our own dreams that this particular project should happen this way, until and unless somebody is willing to believe in us to make it happen.
True that, absolutely true. So this brings me to a very important aspect which mostly people don't talk about, but eventually everybody is going through it, and that's the mindset change. Like from a college student to a professional in the industry, a professional from the industry to a leader in the industry, a leader to a mentor. Everybody in the same line of their professional journey, they change something which is called mindset. How has been your journey of being just a designer to becoming a literally project manager to becoming a mentor for your team? What have you changed internally? So one is the communication outside. What is the internal communication that you have dealt with? Would you like to talk about that?
I think it's a very beautiful thing you asked me, because when I was talking about communication, I did not realize I never spoke about what was the internal dialogue. But there was a lot of chatter, and then I had to kind of, find my voice in terms of what I want myself to talk about, what I want uh, Priyanka to kind of hear when she goes out, and that was mostly to be very humble in your approach, and how to conduct yourself. So right at joining the industry, like I told you, it's very very humbling of what I envisioned and what it was going to be. So every now and then, what I started doing was to talk to myself honestly. Do we want this? And also to give myself the freedom of choice.
I think that is something about removing the self bias. Is that so?
In a way. So when I talk about giving myself the freedom of choice, the fact that things are happening to me, I change that dialogue to I chose it this way and this is my decision I'm following upon. The outcome, you expect a very idealistic outcome of everything. That's not how things work because life factors in, different other aspects weigh in. So I started talking to myself in a way that, you chose this and now this is, you're free from it any day you want to. That was quite liberating for me that okay, yeah, बात तो सही है. I am the one who chose this for myself and I can any day switch, move, change because I'm an individual. I'm always growing. And the other aspect of my internal dialogue was always that what began earlier on, that is it me running away from a small challenge because it's going to need change, or is it just not meant for me? So that helped me a lot in getting aligned with where I see myself, what I want to do, and where I'm headed. So I have been not those people who can do a vision board for 5 years. I just know that today I like this. In next 3 months, I'm going to reflect again. So every next quarter, I always reflect. Okay, what we did, do we like it, and what I could change to do better. Like, did I do some X thing in a 50% capacity? If I go to 70, will it be like great for me? So I try and strive for that now because one, that relieves me to some extent of external competition because I'm already struggling with the internal competition. कि ये तो yesterday it wasn't that great, tomorrow it has to be better. Two, to be honest with what you do. Sometimes you might feel that come all the way, how did it all happen, do I want to go back and change something? But then I realized that honestly it was me, me pushing myself to lead to this place. So that's the kind of dialogue I've had. And then when I got into project management, I told you it was out of a whim that, okay, now you guys are not able to do what I want. Let me go and understand what's on the other side. Why this hindrance of me thinking a certain way and things coming out a different way. So project management, I would tell you, was itself a meditative process for me because every day was a challenge. Everything was a challenge. My working hours were a challenge. I was not accustomed to work at 3 in the night and then have those challenges, phone calls, talking to people. So I'll give you a very weird example. I had sent one team to a side somewhere down south, and they were supposed to reach a certain time. And I was working in the mall, and they have their guidelines on what hours you can work and permits and whatnot. And at 3, I get a call that हमारा train miss हो गया. Like the guy said that my train is missed. No, I'm not going to be able to reach on time. And that is what he was telling me at 3 at night. And the next day is when he's supposed to start working in the morning. So now what do I do? So I was not accustomed to firefighting challenges, thinking on my feet and doing some real life, not so glam decision making and getting on with it. So that time itself taught me a lot in terms of who I actually was and what I made of myself, and how coming into someone else's shoes tells you that you might think that they are not doing something, but there are different set of challenges on that end. So that was very I would say enlightening for me. And by the end of it, I realized that it's not meant for me. It was a good stint. I liked what I learned. And I carry that forward with me, crisis management, thinking on your feet, value engineering whenever you can. And that helped me a great deal in, working with the team. So I grew my team from.
So that brings me to a question. When you said you're not accustomed to crisis management, what is that change in your mind at 3 a.m. in the morning you had that this is now you have to do?
See, we are wired very differently in architecture school, in design school, the kind of challenges that are going to come your way. I'm sure I don't want to sound very godmother kind, but it happens to everyone. But for project, when coming into project management is very different. That at 3 a.m. now, one, I have to fight my grogginess. Two, there is a very big fire that I'm answerable for. Whoever's mess it was, it doesn't matter. I'm on the front lines. It's my job to fix it, or to at least get the information to the next level right away, and then think of solution as well. So at 3, I fought my grogginess. I got up and I started thinking, what are the other alternatives I have? So I called my site supervisor. I was like, can you arrange for an alternative till the time this guy reaches, so that the work itself is not hampered, because initially it's more of gathering resources, marking on site, and all of that. And please guide him, and I can be on a video call and we can make it happen. But let's not uh, let this halt the progress of the process. And thankfully he was cool enough to get on board with the idea and help me out. And parallelly I just dropped a very apologetic text to my client that something like this has happened. And though we are promising that the work is not going to get hampered, but we wanted to be honest about the fact that this has occurred. So the client was very generous. They were nice enough to acknowledge it and not let this be a bottleneck. We got
That's
through it.
wonderful. That's wonderful. And I think both external or internal communication, the first thing that helps, and I have also experienced this in my personal side of the story, is acceptability. If I accept certain things, be it external or internal, is the first step of any resolution that you are trying to come on to.
100% with you on that, because acceptability kind of makes the problem smaller immediately. Now you know. And the fact that you are able to accept it will make it easier for you to seek help. So for me to seek help, I had to first accept the fact that okay, it's a small setback, I have failed a little, it's okay, let me ask who can help. And it's worked beautifully for me all the time when I have tried to seek help. It was very difficult in the beginning for me to ask for help. The sense of self was so big that how do I ask someone else for help? But the moment slowly I understood that this is not the end of the world, this doesn't diminishes you at all as a person, and seeking someone else out is all right, it helps.
Lovely, lovely. Now, let me come to a very important section of the podcast, which is about hitting a plateau. Now, you're an experienced professional, you have spent good 12, 15 years in the industry. How do you feel about hitting a plateau? Have you hit a plateau yet? If not, have you come across someone who has hit a plateau in their career? And how have you helped them, or how have you helped yourself?
Well, Sachin, this is something not most people talk about, but it's very real. It happens to everyone. It happened to me, and what came out after that was something I am very proud of. So I have friends who have hit plateaus, and I have friends who have realized that not realized that they're burning out, but they have burnt out, and they have not either they have not realized or they are not willing to face the truth that this is happening and this has happened, because the sense of missing out is so big that
True
you
that.
don't want to take a pause. It happened to me, so it began in 2019, towards the end of 2019, that a sense of uh, dissatisfaction or a sense of unfulfillment started to creep in, but I did not pay much attention to it for a good few months. And by the time I realized, I was so lucky that COVID 19 had hit. So,
I think that's a lucky point for a lot of people who are
yeah.
introspecting.
Yeah, so that happened. And for me, a very different thing happened. For a lot of people, they could take a pause and think and act. It was different for me. I did take a pause, but I was not ready to face that this is happening. So through the COVID-19 period, also I kept on fighting. I tried on getting on whims. I started. So what I did was that why am I unhappy? To get to the bottom of it, I was like, oh, I want to do a certain things earlier on, but then I started working. I couldn't do that. Let me do one of those things, and probably I'll start feeling more fulfilled. So I wanted to learn a language. I started learning Spanish.
Lovely.
So luckily, the idea was unluckily rather. The idea was to go to the institute, meet new people, and learn the language. But right when I was to start going to the institute, COVID hit, and it all became like a virtual classroom for us. So the whole adaptability to meeting new people, learning a new language online was a good challenge that kept me on my feet. That helped me a lot. When this COVID period kind of burned out and we were okay to come out from lockdown, I was the first person to go on the site because I wanted to stop the voices so badly in my head, which were telling me that maybe we need to take a pause. So it went on and it went on until I think August 2021. I did not realize that no, it's not working out. So I from talking to a therapist to everything, it helped me figure out what was the missing link, what is not working out, and what I need to do. So finally, in September 2021, I took a sabbatical, and for a couple of months, I decided that I'm not going to do my regular work and figure it out that what works for me and what I need to do next. So a few couple of weeks were just doing nothing, and then traveling a lot. Wherever I wanted to go, I went. People I wanted to meet, I met, and I took that time to kind of reflect and think. And more than what the time was, the ability to take that decision was a big thing for me. So I come from a family where people don't stop working. So to break it down to my family, that guys, hi. So today I'm thinking that maybe I'm not going to work for a while. And these were the people who were not accustomed to me saying that to them ever. So that was a bit of a challenge that I took on. And then, lucky for me, my family was on board, and they were all very concerned and cool with it. So we took some trips together, we had some fun, and finally in 2022, around March of it, I decided to go and work full time. I was working on some projects with some of my friends during that time, but to work full time is when I decided in March 2022.
I think that's very important. We kind of get stuck in a situation of grind. We're continuously in the grind, and hence we don't think of taking a break, reflecting back on us, and try to understand what is it that you're lacking. So this brings me to another question. I'm sure you would have been doing a lot of things, but has there been any specific habits or any specific strategies that you followed specifically to come out of that not working for long, or maybe uh, that situation, that mindset that you were going through? If you took a sabbatical, what was that habit that brought you back?
Yeah, that's very very important. When you ask me this, takes me back to the time that what was I doing. It was mostly removing myself from the situation, becoming the third person. That helps me every time. It helps me today also. That it's not me who is facing this. I become a friend. So one of the person I was talking to told me that, would you do that to your friend? I was like, yeah, this makes sense to me. So what I started doing was that I started becoming the outsider on the situation and analyze. Most of the time, the problems aren't anything at all, and the fact that you waste time on this, that okay, in will it be big enough in 2 weeks? Will this be a big thing or a big failure in another month or a year? That kind of neutralizes the problem to a big extent for me. That is something I kept on doing. And the fact that sometimes you need to uh, create a sense of self belief. You have to reassure yourself so that you are not down by your insecurities. I don't know about you, but I am a very insecure person. I have to constantly kind of tell myself that it's all right. We are here, and the failures are not the end of the world for you, and that's not what finishes you. They actually nudge you and help you pivot to a new direction. So those are the kind of things that help me through the time. And the fact that I got to a place where I knew I can bounce back anytime. The self love, self belief kind of became real for me through that time, and that's what helped me come back.
That's lovely. I think everyone in the world has some sort of insecurities. The only thing that helps is, again, what you said, acceptability. Once you accept that there is a insecurity, it's easier for you to fight with it. Do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Lovely, lovely. So this brings me to a very interesting piece of a career decision, is how you have evolved from being a designer to becoming a full-fledged leader in the industry, if someone is starting off today in architecture or interiors or design as a whole, what would be your suggestions to that person? To what would you change as a person yourself if you would meet your younger self?
Okay. Beautiful. I think had I been given the chance to talk to my younger self, I would have said so many things, but I'll come to that. Before, if somebody is starting out in design, in any principle of it, could be space design, could be comms, could be uh, just UI, UX, whatever works for them. The first thing to do is to be very honest of the fact that even if you have enrolled, you are in college, do you really want to do it? That is something that constantly has to be in the equation, that being true to what you do and then giving 100% of what you do. It would be tough, it is challenging, but the more we give, the more easier it gets to get to the next step. So that is something I really feel I should have done more, and I would suggest for somebody starting out to do that and be honest in who you want to work with. I might seem like a very big, a very glam, very hip company to work with, but am I aligned with you? If not, I think one should find what works for them and align towards that. And then the fact that you need to reflect. If people can do it monthly, lovely. I can do it quarterly, it helps. Whatever is your pace, you pick it up and you reflect. You reflect on the decision made, you reflect on where you are headed and what you want. So when you work with somebody, be very upfront about the fact that what you seek from them also. The idea of being humble is not being timid. You don't have to shrink your footprint to fit in. You can be open about the fact that okay, I seek so and so from you, and every individual or every professional would highly appreciate the fact that you have come clean and you're open about what you seek. So those things, and giving 100% and taking a few risks. Being safe is nice, it's not fun. Taking few risks every now and then, and taking that leap of faith. Okay, let's do it, we'll be able to do it. If it works out, it's a very different world that opens up to you. If it doesn't, you get redirected to a place which will eventually end up in progress. So that's something that I feel is something that somebody who's starting out in any career should do. For me, if I could go back and talk to myself some 12 years ago, I would have said that don't take yourself so seriously. You are not the center of the world. I know this is not very soft to say, but I really needed to hear that, because with the biases that we go out, that which are we get weaponized with the fact that we are skilled in something, this works for me, I'm validated for my skill. So now when I go out, what I'm going to do, I have got the Midas touch, what I'm going to touch is going to become gold. That I need to tell myself. And the fact that uh, let go of the burden of being right. So don't take yourself so seriously.
I think it's very important that somebody admits the fact that yes, you are just another person in the world. Don't fixate yourself that you're the best. You are the best, that's okay. But prove it with your work. Because there are, again, no, this is a situation that I've come across with a lot of my mentees is they always struggle with proving themselves. And when you go back with proving yourself without the emphasis of proving yourself, you prove yourself the best. Do you agree?
Very, very well put. The fact that you are not heading out to prove yourself, but to do something right, will eventually help you prove yourself.
True that, true that.
Very well
Lovely,
said.
lovely. So this brings me to the most interesting piece of the discussion, which is a rapid fire round. I will ask you 5 questions. You're not supposed to think at all. Whatever comes to your mind, straight away give me the answer.
Okay.
Shall we begin?
Yeah.
Great. A design trend that you're loving right now.
Minimalism.
One thing designers overthink way too much.
Concept story.
If you could mentor your younger self, what's the first thing you would teach?
Shut up and work.
That's so true. Damn. Most underrated skill in design careers.
Knowing the costs.
One book or podcast or any resource that you have always come back to. You can always say ours.
I would say Tuesdays with Maury is a very beautiful book, not just for designers, for anyone. It makes you more human.
That was really awesome. And I really love these kind of candid conversations that I just had with you. Any last thoughts to people, designers, non designers, or people just starting off to explore design, you would give them as your first suggestion?
Well, I would say we summed up most of it, but just go for it is the most important thing. Don't think too much. I think action helps us discover far more than reading up or gathering knowledge. This is my own experience, for a very long time I could not take action, but to make it more perfect, don't look at perfection. Go out there, seek out feedback from your colleagues, your friends, anyone you feel is worthy, and reach out to people. They always answer. Be open is what I would end with.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Priyanka, for being on the show. I would love to hear more when we meet again. And I would love to host you back again because I feel that there is more that we can talk about and we could get less time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sachin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching the video till the end. I hope it added value. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please do let me know in the comments below if you want to explore any other career.